Welcome to the Yes Show. I'm your host, Christine Trippi. Each week, we'll explore the life-changing power of saying yes, along with hotel leadership made easy. Get ready for inspiration, fun, and sweet hospitality. Let's go. Welcome, Wife Pineapples. Today's guest is Chris Green, a hospitality advisor, keynote speaker, author, and founder of the Cedar Road Investments. His advisory services bring over 30 years of successful hospitality experience to his clients. Formerly the president of Remington Hospitality and president and CEO of Chesapeake Hospitality, Chris specializes in property acquisition, operations, organizational structure, brand relations, and complex repositioning efforts. You probably know Chris because he is a regular guest on the No Vacancy Live podcast and a frequent contributor to various industry publications. As if that wasn't enough, Chris is also the author of The River Guide to Leadership, detailing much of what he's learned in his years leading teams. Let's welcome Chris on stage and dive into this juicy conversation. Hello, Chris.
Hey, Christine, how are you?
I'm amazing, and I'm so excited to have you. And I am going to jump right into that first amazing life-changing yes. Yeah, let's go. So you shared that your life-changing yes was embracing the leader you were meant to be, rather than what others expected of you. Now, tell us a little bit about how that happened for you in that pivotal yes moment and how it reshaped your leadership journey.
Well, thanks for asking. I'm so excited to share this. It was one of the most pivotal points in my career. We are all informed by what's around us and what we see happening. And we also, as we grow our careers, we look at what we believe is successful. And sometimes we try to emulate that, even if it's uncomfortable for us. But I knew early in my career, I wanted to really succeed in hospitality. I love the business. I love people. But what I found myself doing was emulating some leaders that were getting their results in a way that I wasn't comfortable with, or I didn't feel like fit who Chris Green was. The best way I can tell you, Christine, is a story that I tell all the time. I was walking through the lobby of a hotel. I was the assistant general manager of this hotel back in probably 2000 or so. And I was really proud of myself. I had my fancy suit on and I'm just moving 100 miles an hour. And honestly, I was stepping over a lot of people on my way to try and gain success. Not because I necessarily believed it was the right thing. I sure didn't, but it was just what I saw happening. Like, you just got to get yours. And so I was walking through the lobby, and one of our lobby attendants, who I remember to this day, and I thank her for this moment, was working. And I walked by at a really fast pace. And I said, good morning, how are you? And she said, I'm good, how are you? And I said, good. And I kept walking. And she said, do you even care how I really am?
She said that to you.
Yeah, it was like a dagger to my heart. And people that know me know that I'm a heart-led leader. But until that day, I never thought about the fact that I was walking over people on my way to try and get somewhere. And it was kind of a lonely existence. I think I was a decent leader and a good manager and obviously having some success, but at what cost? And honestly, right then and there, I determined that I was going to change the way I interacted with people, putting people first, understanding what they were going through. And literally that changed the trajectory of my career. It really did. It helped people to become closer to me as a leader, get more enrolled in the things that I was trying to get done because they knew me as a human instead of as a GM or whatever it was. And it really helped me to I think, see the success I did in my career. So I'm so thankful for it. I wasn't living in conflict anymore. I was completely and totally who I was supposed to be.
Yes. And especially because I think when you see C-suite men, and maybe this is just my perspective as a woman, that you sometimes, you just see that more straight-laced, professional, isn't vulnerable, doesn't tap into the emotional side. And maybe that's just the Gen X upbringing that I have, but you tend to see that and it's more intimidating. When that happened to you, what was you had this epiphany, you had this aha. What was your first step? What did you think? okay, I need to do something different, the awareness. But then what did you do? Like, what were those first steps once you achieved that awareness?
That's a great question. I immediately started to pay more attention to people. I told myself right then and there that when I asked someone a question, I was going to, well, I don't even know if we had cell phones then. I mean, maybe, but I'm not going to look at my phone. I was going to look them in the eyes. I was going to listen to understand and hear, not to respond or move on, and get to know them as humans. And what it taught me was, as I grew my career, like you may not remember this, but our tagline at Chesapeake Hospitality was experience what's possible. So a lot of people would look at that and say, oh, they're talking about what's possible in management. And what it really meant to us at Chesapeake and me as a leader was everybody to experience their possible. So everybody in our business has a different outcome that they're looking at. Some people are stay-at-home dads or moms or caregivers, or they're going to college. So they don't want to climb the ladder. They want a place where they could be valued and have a good pay rate, good benefits. If you don't get to know your teams at a personal level and really care what's going on, yes, you can make results happen, but at what cost? That's what I always said. I would rather have a team that's fully enrolled and engaged in what we're trying to do because they believe in everything we're doing than just making money. Truth be told, I made lots of money for our hotels through this strategy too. I think one of the most interesting comments I ever got was, as you know, I retired in April, and I was actually in Italy with my wife celebrating my retirement. And there was a lady there who, she's been in the corporate world the whole time. And so about the 10th day of the trip, we were on a group trip. She said, I apologize, but you just don't seem like a CEO. I said, well, what do you mean? And she says, you're too nice. And I'm like, well, that's just who I am, right? I just am very approachable and I want to be approachable. So it was for me.
I'll share a little story with you from, again, I think with many people's perspective, and maybe it's my age, my generation, but I feel like our industry is filled with women leaders. I feel like it's almost a women-driven company. But yet, whenever I'm talking with the CEO of a company, I remember maybe a year or two ago when I first started on my own, I was talking with a woman about presenting at their conference for their general manager conference. And then when I was asking more about her, I said, what's your position? And she said, I'm the CEO. And I went, oh, wow. So just from my reaction, I guess we're still not there yet. Because that does still sometimes surprise me to see a female at that CEO level of the company. So I love seeing that change. I've been working with a lot of female CEOs now, and I'm proud to be one of them, of my tiny little company.
Yes.
But that's the thing. I think just like what that person said to you, that's our impression. And I love, especially when strong men like yourself in high level positions open up with vulnerability, open up with fun, open up with getting to know their team members, to show that this is okay. You don't have to be the stern CEO type.
Right. Well, we all just have different jobs. That's what I used to say to people. Once I realized it, I really did have an epiphany in my career. I think I was about 34 when that happened. And it just changed everything for me. It freed me up to live how I was supposed to be. And I just felt so much more authentic. And in enrolling my people and teams in and bringing them close to me, like this is stressing me out, or this is hard for me to accept, and letting them share the frustrations I had as a human in my job didn't mean my job was any different or better than their job. All of us had these roles to complete, and it changed it from me being the leader to us locking arms and realizing that we all just had different roles. And once that happened, I mean, it was incredible. And I'm super happy about all the women in leadership too. I've been a huge advocate of women in leadership, and I think our industry was rife with problems around women in leadership, getting them there. And that's something that we're working to correct hard as an industry, and it's working. You see you just saw Dawn Gallagher became the CEO of Crescent.
Yes.
So, I mean, incredible, right? That's a big management company, and she deserves it. She's an incredible person. So there's more of those. Jamie Carragher from Lodging Dynamics. I mean, you've got a lot of
Yes.
Yeah.
And today I just did a presentation for Commonwealth Hotels, and Jennifer Porter is now
I know Jennifer Porter.
Yes, she's amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing company too over there at Commonwealth. So I love it. I could tap into your CEO-ness all day. I can think of 2 questions that I'd love to tap into before I get to more. I want to get on your book and whatnot. One, being the CEO. Okay, now you earlier in your career, you identified this need and whatnot. You started to adapt that and get to know people and whatnot. Then as you climb the ladder, now you're the CEO of a pretty big company. How do you instill that? Because your circle are your executive team, and then they have to bring it down to theirs and then down, etc. How do you implement that throughout a company when you're at the top?
A lot of it has to do with the philosophy of the Riverbanks that I talk about in my book. So, and I won't get into it all, but the Riverbanks are basically your guiding principle. They're the guardrails of your life, whether it's your leadership life, your personal life, whatever. And I think how you frame those guardrails, or Riverbanks, I call them, sends a message to your organization, right? My Riverbanks were never, we're going to be the most profitable. We're going to be the fastest growing. We're going to be the best cost. Those weren't that. Mine were, we're going to be kind. We're going to be people of integrity. We're going to be people that do the right thing even when it's difficult. We're going to be a place where all people feel welcome and all people can thrive in their careers. So, but if you think about it at a very high level, Christine, if integrity is one of my Riverbanks, okay, then it is out of integrity if you're a professional hotel manager to not be profitable or to not be clean or to not be well organized. But instead of speaking to those specific tasks, these are deep-seated beliefs that people can get a hold of. Like, it's also out of integrity to mistreat your associates. So if you set those things, and within those guardrails or riverbanks, there's a ton of freedom. You can operate however you want, as long as you're inside my riverbanks or the company's riverbanks and you're going the same direction, and don't run into the riverbanks. Because if you do, I'm going to direct you back to the center of the river. That's my job. But it was really about setting and letting people be free to be kind, like kindness. That's one of our riverbanks. Okay, that's easy to think about how you do that, right? And there's nothing in there that creates an environment of sternness or there's just not. And you got to be able to give your executive team the freedom to be that too. Because I can tell you what I've learned is, yes, you can make a high-performing organization. I've seen them where it's just like grind it out and hammer down. And I don't think those organizations are built to last. I think that they eventually wear out. And I believe in building an organization or a hotel to last. And if you have strong underlying foundational beliefs and core values that drive you, you can build a hotel that lasts.
Yes. And that's why I love that when you're really smart about it and developing a company and you have a very simple, memorable mission statement and core values, that's not like when you ask even the CEO of the company, oh, let me look it up in the handbook. It's so simple that every person in the company can repeat it. And when you can constantly go, you know what, I have 2 decisions to make here. Which should I do? If you can go back to what's our mission, does it align with the mission? I'm golden.
Yeah.
That gives you freedom. It gives you power. It gives you confidence in your decisions. And I think that's a real key to successfully channel that trickle down.
One of the favorite speeches I give is called the filter philosophy. And I will walk up on stage with a coffee filter. My point is, in the filter philosophy, only you put coffee in, but the only thing that comes out is that beautiful gold, beautiful brown liquid that we all love so much. Well, if my personal filter is integrity, my personal filter is kindness as a leader, then there's a whole lot of things that don't pass through, right? Not being good with diversity and inclusion. Does that pass through the filter of integrity? Absolutely not. Not hiring a person because they may have a disability or a challenge, or maybe their background does that pass through the filter of being a good hospitality professional? It does not. So if those things don't pass through that filter, we don't do them.
Yeah, I love that analogy. So in the book, The River Guide to Leadership, you use the nature as a metaphor. Do you want to tell us a little bit more? You tell us about the guide rails, but tell us a little bit more about that and the inspiration to write the book.
I'm not a writer, and it was a big challenge. Everybody that's ever done it knows it's a super hard thing to do because you're kind of bearing your soul. And also, if you're not a writer, you can read it and read it and read it, and you're like, is it any good? I don't know. And but what the impetus was is I gave this speech, the Riverbanks speech, for years at hotels. Every time I would take over a hotel, I would talk about there's the few things, the riverbank and integrity and freedom within the river. And if you don't have riverbanks, then you have a flood, and floods are dramatic and they cause damage. And it's just something that people can get their heads around. They're like, I get it. So when I was getting ready to think about what I was going to be doing after my hospitality career, there was a lot of people that said to me, you got to write the Riverbanks down. You have to, because it works. Everybody that hears it gets it, and it's easy. So I thought, okay, I'll write the story. And the story did evolve over the years. There was an actual river trip. That's me on the cover with 5 of my friends at the Ocoee. Yep, that's me in the front of the boat there. There's even a story about that. But it really came to inform this theory of, I saw, okay, you got to have the banks, and then you got to have everybody in the raft. And who do you put the raft? And where does trust factor in? Because you're putting your life in somebody's hands when you're going whitewater rafting, right? Mm-hmm. We're doing the same thing in hospitality. I mean, I know that nobody lives or dies at a hotel normally, but you are putting their future in. They're putting their future in your hands as their guide. So what does that mean to be their leader? And then also, I've seen, and that we were in a big rapid there. You're going to experience rapids. How do you handle rapids as a leader? So it just really worked to bring in all that, metaphorical, the imagery to go along with the story. That's why it's called The River Guide.
So thinking about this major merger that you had to manage, I love the alliteration. Thinking about when you were the CEO, president of Chesapeake, and then you blended with Remington, tell me about the key principles in your book that helped you to manage a massive transition like that. That must have been very daunting. That was something new for you. Is that correct?
It was. I'd never been through a merger.
Okay.
And honestly, I think that we had never really thought about merging with anybody. We didn't think that was the future for us. But of course, the pandemic occurred, and several of the partners at Chesapeake were closer to retirement age than I was at the time. And so we had to decide, were we going to be able to rebuild the organization, or would it be better to partner with a like-minded organization and continue to grow the business? So the first step was being of integrity, making sure that our guardrails were in place, and looking for a partner that wanted to do the things that we were doing at the time: culture-driven, associate-driven, client-focused management. And so I met Sloan Dean, and we hit it off. I mean, at that time, we were experienced what's possible, and Remington was the place where passionate people thrive. Sloan had really leaned into a culture-forward organization, in one that had not always been that way, and he was making great strides. And so we came together on that people were first. So once we did that, then it was just understanding the deliverables and were we going to be able to bring the two cultures together. And honestly, it went together pretty easily. Now, putting two companies together is not an easy thing, right? You've got different accounting systems and different sales systems and everything else. But the thing is which has always been the case in my career, if people believe in where they're going and they trust the leadership team is taking them somewhere on the river that they're going to succeed at, they will dive in and do it. And so we got most of the work done in the first 6 months. And it was, believe me, it was very hard. I don't want to make light of it. It was very hard, and it was a lot of work, but it's also been extremely successful. Remington, we grew third party by more than 50% once we joined. So bringing our reputation to Remington's reputation enhanced the marketplace's belief in our organization. And we've seen huge growth. We've expanded into the Caribbean. So there's things that have happened since the merger that have been really, really good and a good outcome.
Thinking about that merger, And whether it's a shift at work, whether it's a promotion or a keynote that I have, I always ask myself the 4 power questions. And that's what went right, what didn't, what am I learning, what am I going to do different next time? What would you say is something that you were like, whoa, this didn't go well, I would do it better, or that learning piece?
It's embarrassing because it's probably one of the oldest things, right? What is don't ever assume anything? Well, there was a lot of things on the technology stack that both companies had in aligned with. We both used a certain accounting software. We both used a certain forecasting software. So we assumed that there were other issues we were going to deal with, but those things would just go right together, like peanut butter and jelly or whatever. Well, it's really interesting to see how differently you can use Excel and I can use Excel, or that you can use a certain program and I can use it. And so the interesting part was on one of the most complex systems, they were using it completely differently than we were using it. So when we tried to put them together, they didn't even talk to each other. So I would just not assume anything. I would check. I actually heard something really fascinating today that there's this huge organization. I'm not going to say who because I don't want to, they had a big snafu lately, but it's not a manager company. It's in the airline space, but they actually have a test. They have a exact replica of their tech stack on like a server. And so it replicates the whole organization. And then they have the real organization. So, but anything they're going to do out in the real world, they test it on baby organization and see if it blows things up. Brilliant, right?
Huge learning right there. That's huge. Well, if anybody, let's just think about maybe the general manager who is currently listening in and their company is having a merger. And now you're merging your team and you had the control over this merger. You chose the people you were merging with. For people that are in the company, they don't have the control. They just have to manage it. Is there any piece of advice you'd say of helping a general manager during a transition like this?
I would say be a positive catalyst. How you go, so goes your team. They can sense how you feel. They can sense whether you're genuine. And if it's a foregone conclusion, if you're merging already, then I say give it everything you got until such time as you can't, right? So sometimes they're not going to be perfect, but your responsibility to the 100 or 200 or 500 or 1,000 employees you have is to give it everything you got and be as positive as you can and be a catalyst for good. Because I promise you, if you're a catalyst for negative, it definitely won't work, right? And that's the same thing I do when I talk about, so my whole career was built on taking over hotels, right? Third-party hotels, take over a hotel. And every time we take over a broken hotel, there was 2 things that I saw. One was no Riverbanks. There was a flood going on at the hotel. So they didn't have a firm idea of who they were, or where they were going. And the other one was a excuse-based or resistance-based mentality. Like I would hear all the reasons why they couldn't compete in the marketplace. And my question to them is, I would say, well, then should we just close? Should we just close the hotel? And everybody's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, I was like, I'm kind of kidding. We're not going to close. But if we come at it from that direction, we're never going to win. So let's think about how could we win? And you get people thinking in this positive catalyst mentality. Changing a hotel's direction is not as hard as everybody wants to make it out to be. It's about people and giving them something they believe in and showing them they can win and then celebrating those wins and sharing the wins with everybody.
And the credits.
Correct. I mean, that's what I mean. Just because you're the GM doesn't mean you're the one that made it all happen. I mean, you wouldn't do anything without the laundry attendants taking care of. And I'm so thankful, man. I mean, I'm most thankful in my whole career for night auditors because I can't stay up overnight. I can't. I had to be up till 4 a.m. the other night because of a snafu with a flight, and I thought I was going to die.
Oh my gosh. I have to say, every once in a while when the auditor would turn over or be on vacation, it was a nice break.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Nice break to do audit for a week.
Christine, you'll laugh. At most of my hotels, I would find a good auditor, and I would create a night audit management position. I would give them a manager's job just to make sure they never left. I never wanted to work the overnight shift. I just couldn't do it. Not because I didn't want to be there with my hotel. I can't stay up like that. I don't know what it is. So.
What advice would you give for an up-and-coming leader who aspires to get to that executive position, whether that's GM, VP, or a C-suite? Is there any, I mean, aside from what we've already kind of talked about, is there any other habit or daily routine as a CEO that if you started sooner, you'd be even more successful?
I would say one of the things is being extremely curious. And I love that in leaders, like really curious about, don't have a voracious appetite for learning. One of the things that helped me the most was I have no ego, none. If you know more than me, that's great because I want to learn from you, right? So if you hear something you don't understand, ask questions. Tell me about that revenue management strategy. Why does that work? What do you mean digital marketing? What does that mean? Just be voracious about learning the business, because the more you intake and understand the business, the more that's back here in your mind. And then you can do what matters in hospitality, which is be with your guests and your people. A lot of people assume that going up the ladder means sitting at a desk more and looking at paperwork or whatever. But the more you can be with your people, guiding your people, supporting them, encouraging them, and still doing the business, it's what I call making magic, right? The more you know and the more you study and understand, you get in the morning, you read your P&L, and then you are out. Like you read your daily report, you read your labor report, and then you're out working with your team. Because that's where the things happen. Nothing happens looking at the daily report other than filling knowledge, what I need to do that day. So my things would be curious, be active, be engaged with your team, and be a positive catalyst.
I couldn't love the answer that you gave about being the positive catalyst more, because truly, I can give you strategy all day long. That's 20% of your results. Your mindset and the team's mindset is 80% of your results. And I have a quote in my book that says, being positive in a challenging situation isn't naive, it's leadership. And that is what leadership is, casting the vision of what we can be. So in reflecting about your career, what legacy do you hope to leave the hospitality industry?
I want to leave that you can be a heart-led leader that puts culture first and win. Whatever that looks like, winning looks like to you. It doesn't have to be that you become CEO.
Right.
I just want to leave a legacy that it's okay to be who you were made to be and not live in conflict, and use your gifts in a unique way to succeed. So I think it's a really boring world if every one of the CEOs of the management company all look the same, right? They're all buttoned up, three-piece. I just think it's a boring world, and not. I like to think of our industry and the broader world as a tapestry, and the more different fabric together, the more beautiful it is. So our job is to be catalysts for that too, right? Being open to that, not closed off, being strategic about looking at different opportunities to hire people with different backgrounds, and just let's just be good humans.
Right.
Right.
Well, a good epiphany that came just right here talking with you. Prior to knowing you after you retired, and we kind of connected with, our entrepreneurial journeys and our books and whatnot, I would have maybe seen you as one of those stiff CEO males. And so again, another great lesson from this conversation is to not assume again, and approach your higher leaders. So many people that are, I don't want to say lower in the company, but are coming up the ranks. They see the lead of their company, and they'd be afraid to approach them or afraid to have a conversation with them. And this is such a great opportunity for people to see, you're a heart-led leader. You're a great guy. You have a conversation with, just like any of us do, and that would be an honor for you, and an honor. I remember the first time I met Arnie Sorensen, and I thought I was going to pass out, and I was like, oh my gosh, how could I possibly approach him? He was the nicest, most welcoming. I can't say enough about Arnie, but he's nice, my friend.
Yeah, he was an incredible guy. I will tell you that one of the biggest confusions people have about being heart-led or being a culture-driven leader is that you're soft. And no one who ever worked for me or with me ever thought I was soft, because they knew one thing. The riverbanks were in place, and they were going to stay in place, whether you're my friend, you worked there 20 years, whatever. If you run up against the riverbanks and you can't comply with kind of what we're going to be as an organization, you can't stay here. And honestly, here's my last little tip for you. Strong riverbanks make strong organizations. Weak riverbanks make weak organizations.
When you don't play by those rules, and then you let the river flow over, if you will, then what happens is you disengage and disenchant all the people who are doing the roles, and that's then you lose your best people. I always love to have a fun question to get to your fun side. If you were going to join a band, any band out there, what band would you want to be a player in? What instrument?
Wait, that's a really great question. I would never be as good, but I probably want to be the drummer for Van Halen. I know it's an old reference, but I just think I think being a drummer would be super cool. I don't want to be a guitar. It looks tiring to stand up and play the guitar the whole time, and I'm a terrible singer. So I think I could be a drummer, and Van Halen was a great band. I'm an 80s guy, so, that'd be something that I would like, though. But yeah, that's a fun question.
Yeah, that's a good one. And Van Halen would be so great. You know what? I don't know about a band, but since I was 15, Lionel Richie has been my favorite. I love Lionel Richie. I would love to sing a duet with Lionel Richie.
That would be awesome. He's smooth. He's so smooth.
So I have two more things for you. My motto is energy times execution equals sweet results. It's not enough to be energized by today's episode, but we want results. So what would you say, thinking about our conversation, what are 3 action items a leader out there listening should or could consider going and doing?
First one is sitting down with a piece of paper and asking yourself the toughest question of all. Are you being authentic to who you're made to be in your leadership role? That's the first one. And if you're not, write down some strategies where you can be more authentic to who you're made to be, to release that conflict. Living in conflict, you're never going to be at your best. And how are people going to see you at your best if you're not at your best? That's the first one. The second one is being voracious in pursuing knowledge. Learn everything about your business. And I'm not talking about, if you're in food and beverage, learn everything about Reams operations. Learn everything about engineering. It just makes you a more well-rounded leader. And then third, find someone to mentor. Because
I love that one. Great one.
And really mentor them. Because when you have to mentor somebody, it elevates the responsibility. Every time I go to talk to a crowd about anything, you would be surprised. I could run a big company and I don't get nervous at all. Going to work every day and do my job and fine. But I go to a new speech and I have a little bit of nerves. And the reason is I want what I say to have impact for them. So when you're mentoring someone, you can't just be worried about you. You got to worry, I want something that I say today to this mentee to matter and help them to get better. It just puts an extra level of responsibility on top of what you're doing.
Yes. And 2 points on what you just said. I love those 3 so much. One, I remember when I was a general manager, I had a 3-hour round trip commute. I did this 3-hour round trip commute for 8 years, and I created a college in a car. I listened to, at the time, CDs, books on CD, and literally I would get to work and I would take some of the key points of what I just listened to and have my huddle. Yeah. And I would just bring it. And then that combines with the next point about mentoring. When you teach what you've learned, you never know your job better than when you teach it, because they ask questions or you have to explain it in a way someone else will understand it. And then all of a sudden it makes more sense to you. And then when they ask questions, well, why is that? And you go, I'm not sure. Then you process it and you're like, this is why. And
right.
You understand your role and your leadership even better. So those are awesome. I love you so much, Chris. But I've got one more for you. Every episode, I ask a guest, what question would you like me to ask my next guest? So I'm going to ask you that, but first, I want you to answer what my last guest wants you to answer. The question is, and it's from Sheeta Door. The question is, how do you go out of your way to engage people, employees, clients, network, etc.? What do you do to go out of your way to engage people?
I don't know if it's just that I'm inherently curious but I just don't walk past people. If they're wearing a shirt that says Naval Aviator, I will go to them and say, were you a pilot? Tell me about being in the Navy. Or if they're wearing a hat or they're dressed up to go to a party, where y'all going tonight? I love people and love hearing their stories. And I think a lot of people will, if you let me back up, in the restaurant business, which I started in before I got hotels, there was this thing called walking the bricks. And if you ever sat in a restaurant and you're at a table and you're looking around for somebody to help you, a lot of times you'll see somebody walking down the aisle with their head down and not looking, and you can't get the server or the manager's attention. Well, that's what we call walking the bricks. And I don't think that's because you're looking at the bricks, not looking at your guests.
Yeah.
And what I do is I live with my eyes up, right? I'm always looking for an opportunity to engage someone. And listen, I'm a sensing person, so I can see you in a minute and tell whether you're having a good day, a bad day, and I can. And I think there's value in being human enough to just talk to people. And so that's the way I do it. I do it all the time. My wife does not like going to parties with me because we talk to everybody. And she's an introvert. So
Well, of course she is, because we extroverts only marry introverts.
Yeah. So.
And, two things on that. That I have a rule that when I walk through the airport, my rule is I'm not allowed to be looking at my phone. Yeah. I literally want to walk through the airport and see people and smile at them. So what would be your question for my next guest, whoever that might be?
Okay, I have it. Is if you could go back in your career and do one thing over, what would it be?
Ooh, I love that. Do you want to answer it for us?
Yeah, it's easy because it goes back to my original yes. I would learn that lesson sooner. I mean, yeah. I would, the lesson that I was taught that day when I was 34 years old, I wish I had been taught it when I was 24 years old. And I probably was taught it by my parents, but I chose to ignore it because I saw the world telling me this is how you have to be to get where you want to go, instead of challenging that idea. So.
Following your heart.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Well, Chris Green, I have loved this conversation. Thank you a million times for being part of the Yes Show. You are a true leader from the heart. I love you.
Well, it's been an honor. Will you let me say one thing to everybody? If you're a leader out in our industry, then you have a responsibility to make other leaders and make people feel comfortable growing and leading. Because if you got the time to listen to this and learn about leadership, take it and do something with it. That's the legacy I want to leave is leaders growing leaders and helping our industry to continue to be what I think is the greatest industry on earth.
Yes, I 100% am with you. It's the greatest industry on earth. And in the show notes, you'll have links for Chris's LinkedIn, his book, and his website. So definitely tap into all his juicy goodness. Chris, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
That's a wrap for today's show. Say yes to taking action and changing the world one yes at a time. And oh, my friend, will you say yes to review, like, and subscribe? The more yeses you give, the more juicy goodness I can bring to all of you wise pineapples. Cool or cool?